The sky above downtown Chicago wore its familiar mid-morning haze, while the streets thrummed with the pulse of weekday traffic. Neil Parker, the 36-year-old founder of a multimillion-dollar tech company, emerged from the revolving doors of the Four Seasons Hotel, clad in a sharp navy suit and elegant Italian leather shoes. He embodied the image of a triumphant CEO that the media adored capturing. He meticulously adjusted the cuff of his shirt, his eyes darting across the street in search of his private driver, who, as ever, lingered across the boulevard in a polished black Cadillac. Yet something caused him to hesitate. Just across the road, near the edge of the sidewalk, a woman was grappling with the challenge of balancing a phone in one hand while managing 4 identical boys with the other. The boys were lively and boisterous, their backpacks jostling as they playfully nudged one another and laughed, blissfully oblivious to the intrigued gaze Neil cast in their direction. His breath caught in his throat. It simply wasn't possible. The woman sported a tousled bun, her sunglasses obscuring part of her features, yet he immediately identified her stance. That was Rachel, the very Rachel he had once envisioned creating a life and family alongside. The very Rachel he had left behind 9 years prior, convincing himself it was for the greater good, that his ambitions required his undivided focus and that love was a diversion he simply couldn't entertain. What about the boys? That was the blow that struck his chest with the most impact. All of them shared light brown hair, striking green eyes, and a unique dimple in their left cheek that appeared when they smiled. Neil advanced, each step echoing with the rapid thump of his heart, growing more intense with every movement. He paused at the edge, observing them, rendered speechless. At first, Rachel overlooked him. She was preoccupied with soothing the boys, casting frustrated glances at her phone. The Uber she had requested was evidently delayed. Neil found himself frozen in place, caught between the weight of anxiety and the pangs of remorse. She finally lifted her gaze and became still. Her lips parted ever so slightly, as though she had just encountered a specter. The sunglasses concealed her gaze, yet Neil could envision the feelings swirling beneath the surface. A jolt of disbelief, a pang of resentment, perhaps a hint of trepidation. "Rachel," he said, his voice steady yet soft, striving to mask the surprise that coursed through him. She took her time to respond. The boys ceased their playful antics and focused their attention on him, their youthful faces filled with curiosity and a lack of fear. One of them tilted his head in a manner that struck Neil with a deep sense of nostalgia, evoking memories of his own childhood photographs. He nearly stumbled. Rachel finally acquiesced, her tension palpable. "Neil," she remarked with a hint of surprise, "didn't anticipate running into you here. I was just coming out of a meeting. What brings you to this place? Are you planning to come by?" His words collided in a chaotic dance. "We live here," she said sharply, adjusting the strap of her purse on her shoulder. "You caught in the space between Chicago and New York. Commerce." He cast another look at the boys, who were now huddled together, whispering with evident curiosity. "Are these my sons?" she interjected, halting him before he could complete his inquiry. He nodded slowly, yet a fire was igniting deep within his chest. "They resemble me. They truly resemble me." Rachel let out a laugh devoid of humor. "Indeed, I've observed that." A prolonged, uncomfortable stillness hung in the air. The Uber had yet to make its appearance, leaving Neil in a state of uncertainty about whether to voice his thoughts or simply walk away. The desire to pose each question swirling in his thoughts was intense. Were they his? Had she attempted to convey her thoughts to him? Had he overlooked a life he was unaware existed? Yet, the rigidity in Rachel's posture suggested to him that this was not the right moment for clarity. "May I assist you with something? Would you like a lift?" he inquired, motioning toward his vehicle. She swiftly shook her head. "We're doing well." He cast his eyes downward at the boys. One of them offered him a smile. The child remarked innocently, "You resemble my mom's friend in the pictures." Rachel's lips pressed together. She rested a soft hand on the child's shoulder. "Lucas, that behavior is quite rude." Neil lowered himself to meet the boy's eyes. "So Lucas, is it?" "Could you please tell me your name?" he inquired of the others. The boy on the left introduced himself, saying, "I'm Nolan. Meet Liam, and over there is Riley." Neil smiled at everyone, his heart shattering. All four names imprinted themselves in his mind immediately. "Do you all attend school in the vicinity?" "We attend Lincoln Elementary." No one responded with pride. Rachel's jaw tightened. She entered the room. "Neil, it's time for us to leave." He stood tall, affirming with a nod. "Absolutely. Apologies. I simply wasn't ready for this situation." She spoke softly. "Neither was I." Just as he was about to continue, a silver Toyota glided to a stop at the curb. The ride-sharing service. Rachel swung the door open and ushered the boys inside. She hesitated before stepping in, finally removing her sunglasses to fully engage with his gaze. "They are wonderful boys," she remarked. "Intelligent, compassionate, and they prefer to maintain their stability." "I would never," he began, but she shook her head in disagreement. She spoke gently, urging, "Let's not do this now. Farewell, Neil." Then she vanished, the car merging into the flow of traffic and rounding the corner, leaving Neil on the sidewalk, utterly shaken. For the last 10 years, he had meticulously crafted a technological empire, gracing magazine covers, collecting accolades, flying in private jets, and amassing a bank account that existed only in the fantasies of most. In that fleeting moment, as the taillights disappeared into the distance, he came to the profound realization that he may have overlooked the most significant opportunity life could present, the chance to embrace fatherhood. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The atmosphere within Neil's upscale condo in downtown Chicago seemed denser than normal. The expansive windows framing the breathtaking vista of Lake Michigan failed to provide him with his customary tranquility. His thoughts churned like a tempest, filled with inquiries, remorse, and a deep-seated pain he struggled to grasp. Since that moment on the sidewalk, his mind had been a whirlwind, unable to settle on anything at all. Encountering Rachel after all that time was unexpected, but the boys, those four identical faces reflecting his own, had utterly dismantled any semblance of composure he had managed to maintain throughout the years. Neil filled a glass with whiskey, despite his usual aversion to drinking in daylight. He stood by the window, gazing outward, yet his eyes seemed to drift past the world beyond. Remnants from almost 10 years past intruded upon his mind, their contours cutting and vivid. 9 years prior, he was a transformed individual, unsettled, fixated on ambition, engulfed by the need to demonstrate something to the world and perhaps even to himself. Rachel had always been a constant presence in his life, the one who anchored him. In those days, she was an educator, compassionate and intelligent, unfazed by his increasing notoriety or expanding wealth. They crossed paths during his early days when he was grappling to launch his app, well before the influx of investors and the buzz of headlines. At one point, her faith in him surpassed even his own belief in himself. Yet, at some point during the ascent, he ceased to pay attention. Rachel yearned for a family, a shared future that transcended the grind of work, while Neil, engrossed in his ambitions, believed he could postpone those dreams. Their final exchange before the separation resonated in his thoughts. Rachel was in tears. She expressed to him that it felt as though she was beside a specter of the man she had once adored. She longed for his presence, yet he remained oblivious to her call. He was preoccupied with discussions with investors, shuttling between San Francisco and Boston, and participating in startup expos. As she turned and walked away, he chose to let her slip from his grasp. He made no effort to pursue her, didn't reach out, and didn't even inquire about her well-being. In that moment, he convinced himself it was a shared sentiment. Yet now he pondered, had she made an effort to connect? Had she attempted to share the news of the pregnancy with him? Is it possible that he blocked her without realizing it? Or even worse, overlooked her? He retrieved his old phone from the drawer, the very one he relied on during that time. He ignited it for the first time in years. The boot process dragged on, and the screen flickered as if it were a failing light bulb. As it finally powered up, Neil began to sift through his old messages and emails, searching for something elusive. 7 unread messages awaited from Rachel, to be precise. The most recent one was from 2 months following their breakup. He opened it, his heart racing with anticipation. It merely stated, "I attempted to call. I truly need to have a conversation. It holds significant value." He listened to the voicemail. 3 artifacts from the same era remained untouched, each one a silent testament to time. He inserted one into his ear. Rachel's voice emerged, trembling yet composed. "Neil, although we haven't had a chance to talk, I felt it was important to share this with you. I am expecting a baby. I'm not sure how you'll choose to use this information, but I felt it was important for you to be aware. I will hold on to them. I shall refrain from making any requests of you. I simply aimed to express my truth." Them. She had spoken those words. He played the second voicemail. Her voice carried a heightened sense of anxiety now. "It seems my previous message may not have reached you. Your company seems to be in the spotlight lately. Congratulations, I suppose. I believe it's important for you to be aware. It is 4 o'clock. I'm expecting quadruplets. Kindly give me a call." Neil eased himself onto the edge of the couch, his hand quivering slightly. For she had informed him. She had followed all the steps perfectly, and he had overlooked it. In his hubris, blinded by his singular focus on achievement, he overlooked the most significant moment of his existence. He had not only lost the love of his life, but he had also unwittingly left behind for children, his offspring. He struggled to articulate the emotions that surged within him at that moment of realization. Appalled, embarrassed, empty, everything. He grabbed his phone and dialed the one person who could potentially lead him to the truth more swiftly. Sophie, his former personal assistant. During that period, she had been employed by him and is now successfully managing her own boutique firm in Atlanta. She answered on the second ring. "Is that you, Neil? What a shocker. Years have passed." He bypassed the niceties. "Sophie, I have a question for you, and I would appreciate your utmost honesty in your response." Her tone shifted to one of gravity right away. "Absolutely. What's happening? In the year 2015, has Rachel attempted to reach out to me at all? Has she arrived at the office? Should I leave messages?" A lengthy silence lingered on the line. "She arrived. Perhaps 2 or 3 instances. I recall. She was filled with emotion. I informed her that you were occupied and that I would relay her messages. But truthfully, Neil, you were quite the disaster back then. There was a constant barrage of shouting at others, long hours stretching to 18 a day, with sleep becoming a rare luxury. I aimed to avoid adding any more pressure to your situation. You didn't provide me with the messages," Neil said, his voice strained. "I understand, I didn't. I apologize." Her tone conveyed a deep sense of regret. "I believed I was safeguarding your time. I truly had no idea she was expecting, I promise." Neil ended the call in silence. His ears buzzed with a persistent noise. Now the responsibility rested solely on their shoulders. No helper, no schedule. Order prevails. Only him. He had removed himself from their existence before they even had the opportunity to unfold. He lingered in that moment, time stretching endlessly, contemplating whether the chance to amend his mistakes had slipped away. Did those boys grow up believing their father had never desired them? That he had simply disappeared from their existence? Would Rachel ever allow him to return? What if it's only in the role of a father? There was but a single path to uncover the truth. On the morrow, he would venture to Lincoln Elementary. Not in a leadership role. Not through attorneys or grandiloquent addresses. Like a man burdened by a grave error, yearning with all his might to mend what had been broken. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The following morning, Neil found himself positioned across the street from Lincoln Elementary School in Evanston, observing his children rush through the front doors, backpacks jostling and laughter resonating in the crisp morning air. The school building, adorned with its red brick walls and vibrant murals, appeared to be the perfect choice for Rachel. Inviting, down-to-earth, and genuine. he had hardly found rest, tormented by the voicemails, the unanswered messages, the images of the boys lingering in his mind. He was completely unaware of their names. He was uncertain whether they had a preference for soccer or science, if they had a peanut allergy or a fascination with dinosaurs. For someone who had established a billion-dollar tech empire, that lack of awareness stung more than any unsuccessful transaction ever might. He lingered beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, a flutter of anxiety coursing through him at the thought of being recognized. Even though he maintained a subtle presence these days, there were still sporadic articles in Forbes or TechCrunch that showcased vintage images of him in a hoodie, laptop in hand, wearing a confident smirk. He felt uncertain about how to engage with Rachel. What might he express? Greetings. Do you recall our previous encounters? I disappeared on you while you were expecting quadruplets. That would not turn out favorably. Nonetheless, he made an attempt. The idea of turning his back once more twisted his insides with unease. Time seemed to stretch endlessly until he finally caught sight of her. Rachel, clutching a pile of folders, her hair in a chaotic bun, concentrated on managing a lively bunch of second graders who were bursting with excitement for recess. She appeared weary yet elegant, aged in a manner that adds depth to a person, enhancing rather than diminishing their beauty. His heart pounded with increasing intensity. He advanced a step, then came to a standstill. In an unexpected moment, four identical boys erupted from the school's main doors. Identical in height, with sandy brown hair and striking blue eyes. They surged toward her, voices overlapping in a cacophony of excitement. Mom, could we visit the park? Have you had a chance to look at my art project? Today I triumphed over Owen in math. Mother, 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 mother. She crouched down to pull them into a swift embrace before directing them toward a woman in a red Subaru who was patiently waiting. Most likely a neighbor or a babysitter. Neil moved in, a surge of urgency compelling him to voice his thoughts before she slipped away once more. Rachel, his voice emerged softer than he anticipated. Yet she caught it. She pivoted abruptly, and for a fleeting moment, her expression revealed no recognition of him. Suddenly, her eyes grew wide, and her body tensed up. Neil, she uttered, skepticism lacing each word. What brings you here? I saw you yesterday, he said, grappling with his thoughts. In front of the coffee shop. I was unaware. Rachel, I was unaware of the boys. I promise you, I discovered the ancient messages, the recorded voicemails. I was completely unaware. She folded her arms, her gaze watchful. That was 9 years back, Neil. 9. Did you forget to make a call? Is it time to check in? I made countless attempts. I understand, he admitted, a hint of shame in his voice. I absorbed all the sounds and stories last night. Your messages have come to my attention. I was truly naive. Engrossed in my work and the growth of the company, I lost track of everything else. She interrupted him abruptly. You disappeared from my existence as if I had never been significant. As if what we shared held no significance. So what's next? You arrive on the scene, drawn in by the sight of 4 boys who mirror your own likeness, and an overwhelming desire to step into the role of their father takes hold of you. Her voice cut through the air, yet her eyes glimmered with a subtle light. Neil advanced with careful deliberation. I do not anticipate absolution. I truly don't anticipate anything, to be honest. I simply wish to give it a shot. I wish to understand them better. I wish to reconnect with you, if that can be arranged. Rachel cast her gaze downward, releasing a slow breath. They are wonderful companions. Intelligent, compassionate, and fiercely determined. Exactly as you are. Yet they have navigated life without a father, Neil. They never once inquired about one. I informed them that you preferred to remain hidden. Neil felt a constriction in his throat. That is simply not the case. I never intended to leave them behind. He paused, catching himself mid-sentence. Justifications won't make a difference in this situation. Aired. An enormous one. Yet I find myself present at this moment. If there's any chance you could allow me to be involved in their lives, even just a little, I promise to prove my worth. I will go to any lengths necessary. Rachel remained silent for an extended moment. The resonant chime of a bell reverberated from the school as other parents started to gather. "You can't simply stroll in and assume the role of their father," she said gently. "That's not how it operates. This isn't merely a transaction that can be resolved with eloquence and strategy." He whispered, "I know. They mean the world to me," she added. "I crafted our existence from the ground up. Assistance unavailable. There is no financial assistance for the child. No appointments scheduled. It was just me and for curious young minds, each eager to explore the depths of challenging inquiries." Neil expressed his desire to respond immediately. "If you would allow me to." Rachel gave a single, deliberate nod. "I will consider it. However, I can't make any guarantees. You will only meet them when I decide the moment is right." "That's more than I deserve," Neil remarked, a wave of relief enveloping him. "Thanks, Rachel." She cast him a lingering glance before turning on her heel and vanishing behind the playground fence. He lingered there a bit longer, a blend of hope and fear intertwining within him. He understood that the path ahead would be challenging. Yet, at this moment, a fissure appeared in the barrier, signaling a new start. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. Neil found himself lost in a fog of contemplation over the next few days, frequently glancing at his phone, yearning for a call or text from Rachel that might bring some news. She made no commitments, and beneath the surface, he understood that she was entirely justified in maintaining her distance. Yet, the mere prospect of being welcomed into the lives of those 4 boys had sparked a flame within him that had long been extinguished. Felt peculiar. He had spent endless hours in boardrooms, inked multimillion-dollar agreements, and journeyed around the globe delivering speeches on innovation and leadership. Yet nothing had ever caused his hands to tremble quite like Rachel's careful, ill-considerate response had. He made an effort to resume his duties at his office in downtown Chicago. Yet he found it difficult to concentrate. Data sheets, programming revisions, seasonal summaries. They all seemed like mere background chatter against the raging tempest within his mind. Rather than returning to the corporate grind, he meandered into a nearby bookstore, purchasing titles on parenting, child development, and even a few introductory guides on connecting with children he had yet to meet. By Thursday, he found it impossible to resist. He crafted a message to Rachel, concise and deliberate. "I trust you and the guys are doing great. I completely understand if you require some time. I'm available whenever you feel prepared." She took her time to respond, and he was perfectly fine with that. However, as the night deepened and he found himself solitary on the balcony of his towering condo, her reply finally came. "The boys are set to play a soccer match Saturday morning at James Park. 9 o'clock in the morning. You're welcome to join us. Observe from afar. Avoid engaging with them. I will speak with you later." He gazed at the screen for what felt like an eternity, absorbing the message repeatedly. It exceeded all his expectations. It wasn't the friendliest of greetings, yet it wasn't entirely uninviting. Saturday morning dawned with a refreshing chill in the air, a subtle reminder that autumn was on the horizon. Neil arrived at the gravel lot of James Park a full 10 minutes ahead of schedule, clad in jeans and a navy pullover, making an effort to blend in. Families were beginning to assemble around the soccer fields. Parents setting up camp chairs, fathers balancing coffee and soccer balls, children eagerly pulling on jerseys with the boundless energy unique to 9-year-olds. He surveyed the surroundings until he caught sight of them. Rachel lingered by a red minivan, distributing water bottles while deftly tying the shoelaces of one young boy. The boys donned identical blue and yellow uniforms, chuckling and playfully jostling one another in that delightful, chaotic manner characteristic of siblings. Observing them from a distance on the field, Neil experienced a profound and comforting weight in his chest. They existed in the flesh, not merely captured in a photograph, a voicemail, or a fleeting memory. They existed as vibrant, dynamic reflections of his essence. They possessed an undeniable beauty. He discovered a secluded nook by a tree and rested against it, attempting to remain unseen while his gaze remained fixated on the field. The game commenced, and while Neil was not well versed in youth soccer, he soon recognized that the boys had inherited more than merely his eyes. They exhibited a fierce spirit, an unwavering determination, and an impressive level of coordination for their years. One of them, whom he believed to be the tallest, netted a goal, then turned to reveal a grin that sent a twist through Neil's heart. He applauded softly, hidden from the jubilant throng. As the final whistle blew and families started to gather their belongings, he lingered. Rachel walked up to him a few minutes later, her face a mask of mystery. "You stayed back," she said, crossing her arms. "Indeed, I truly meant what I expressed," Neil responded. "I will proceed as you wish. I simply had to catch a glimpse of them. I appreciate that." Rachel gazed across the field, observing the boys as they laughed and playfully wrestled in the grass. "Their names are Ethan, Bryce, Mason, and Levi," she murmured softly. "They are in the 3rd grade. They have a passion for pizza, an affinity for Legos, and they believe that fart jokes represent the pinnacle of humor." Neil chuckled gently. "That seems accurate. They possess intelligence," she continued, "along with kindness, and at times they can be quite draining. They've experienced just one way of living, Neil, a singular perspective on the current state of affairs. I'm uncertain about how or if you align with that." He expressed his reluctance to replace anything. "I simply wish to be present in some capacity, even if it begins with me observing from the back row at their games." She glanced over at him. "Eventually, you will need to reveal your true identity to them. Certainly won't be a walk in the park. Questions are bound to arise. Large ones. I will respond to them. Every single one. When you believe they are prepared." Rachel examined his features, looking for a hint of understanding. Perhaps authenticity. Perhaps a sense of remorse. "You vanished once," she remarked. "If you vanish once more, it will shatter them. If this is merely a fleeting moment of remorse, and you're planning to disappear once more, then don't even begin." "I will not disappear," he stated with conviction. "Here we go again." With a single nod, she pivoted and walked away. "I'll keep you updated on their upcoming game." As Neil Watcher departed, a transformation stirred within him. After almost 10 years, he sensed that he was finally starting to steer his life in the right direction. Not through grand gestures or emotional reunions, but rather through consistent, measured progress. The journey stretched before him, yet he was already walking it. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The week following the soccer game flew by in a haze of anxious expectation for Neil. His mind was consumed by thoughts of the boys, their swift movements, the shared laughter that echoed between them, and that fleeting glance one of them cast his way, reminiscent of a spark of familiarity, despite their never having crossed paths before. It felt almost dreamlike to consider that they were his sons. Not merely in a biological sense, but truly his. For entire lives that had started without him, flourished without him, and now lingered just beyond his grasp like a memory he had never been permitted to create. Each day he found himself glancing at his phone, part of him yearning for another message from Rachel, while another part dreaded the possibility of her disappearing once more, taking the boys along with her. On Thursday afternoon, just as he was departing from a strategy meeting with his executive team, a text finally arrived. "Ethan's school science fair is set for tomorrow at 6:30 p.m., taking place at Lincoln Elementary. You are welcome to join. Take your place at the rear. I'll inform you when the moment arrives to greet." Neil's heart raced. He hardly glanced at the remaining emails, anticipating the one that would capture his focus. He chose to leave the office early, heading to a nearby bookstore where he purchased a children's science encyclopedia. Though uncertain of its appropriateness, he felt compelled to bring something along. He drove home, meticulously ironing his sole casual button-down shirt 3 times, rehearsing the way he might greet a 9-year-old he had a hand in bringing into the world but had never embraced. The following evening, the parking lot of Lincoln Elementary in Evanston was bustling with cars. Parents donned in coats brought science boards through the doors, engaging in conversation with their children and capturing moments with their cameras. Neil lingered at the rear of the school's multipurpose hall, observing the children as they arranged their projects on the lengthy cafeteria tables. He noticed Rachel right away, positioned by one of the tables with 4 identical boys buzzing around her, assisting one of them in fine-tuning a model volcano. Neil felt a sudden tightness in his throat. This had transcended mere play. These were undoubtedly his children. This was genuine. The young lad, standing with a sense of pride before the volcano, bore Neil's unmistakable chin and shared the same subtle habit of curling his lips when deep in thought. That was Ethan, the son of his. His heart throbbed under the burden of it. Rachel looked up, noticed him, and offered a slight nod. Her expression was neutral, neither a smile nor a frown gracing her features. Advancement. Neil fulfilled his commitment. He lingered at the rear, hands tucked into his pockets, blending into the vibrant throng of parents and children. Ethan's project was titled How Eruptions Work, and he presented it to 3 different groups with a confidence that filled Neil with pride. He observed as Bryce and Mason distributed the small paper information sheets that Ethan had printed, while Levi stood next to them, creating sound effects and pretending to be lava. Cohesive unit. A singular entity. In some inexplicable way, he was intertwined with it all. As the minutes passed and the crowd began to disperse, Rachel made her way toward him. Her eyes held a hint of caution, yet they were gentler than they had been previously. Feel free to greet me now. Only Ethan. Just a moment. Maintain a cheerful vibe. Neil nodded, a wave of uncertainty washing over him. As he neared the table, a weight seemed to anchor his feet more than ever before. Ethan glanced upward, intrigued yet untroubled. Hello, Neil remarked, lowering himself a bit to meet her gaze. I know your mother quite well. I noticed your project from a distance. It's truly remarkable. Ethan beamed with pride. Thank you. Volcanoes captivate me. Did you witness its eruption? I did, Neil said. The mixture of baking soda and vinegar? Timeless yet impactful. Your explanation was exceptionally clear. The young lad radiated joy. Indeed, I created a character as well. Would you like to take a look? With keen interest, Neil leaned in, nodding thoughtfully as Ethan articulated his hypothesis and the methods he employed to test it. Neil paid close attention, posing just the right number of inquiries. Not overly extensive, not too sparse. As the time came to a close, Rachel softly placed her hand on his arm. Neil rose to his feet, a smile spreading across his face as he looked at Ethan. Your performance this evening was truly impressive. Continue creating amazing things. All right? Understood. Ethan responded, pivoting to present his chart to a fellow student. As Neil and Rachel distanced themselves from the throng, she let out a slow breath. Your performance was commendable. I appreciate your restraint. Neil expressed that he simply wanted him to realize there's someone else who finds him remarkable. Simply put, he is. Rachel cast a sidelong look at him, her expression once more a mystery. They are planning a camping trip for next weekend. A gathering with a few of their peers from school. I'll consider having you stop by on Sunday before we return. They will feel exhausted. Perhaps now is the perfect moment to present you to each of them. With a solemn nod, Neil acknowledged, barely able to find his voice. I would appreciate that. As he made his way back to his condo that night, the streetlights of downtown Chicago appeared to shine with an even more intense brilliance. After so many years, he finally sensed that he was truly living his own life. He was moving into his own, clumsily delayed and burdened with more regret than he could ever tally, yet still advancing. He revisited the melody of Ethan's voice, the glimmer in his eyes as he spoke passionately about volcanoes. Neil was unaware of the depth of his longing for that connection until it enveloped him. And now, he found it impossible to consider parting with it. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The weekend descended with an electric restlessness that Neil found impossible to dispel. On Sunday morning, he awoke before the sun, pacing his condo like a soldier anticipating word from a far-off front. Rachel had messaged him the previous night. We planned to return from the campground at approximately 2 p.m. If you decide to visit, please make it brief. We will feel exhausted. He perused the message repeatedly, each revisit solidifying its reality. Today he was set to reunite with his sons. Not merely one. Not within the confines of a bustling school gym. Not through fleeting glances or uncomfortable introductions, but all four of them. And not as an outsider. Though Rachel hadn't voiced it directly, Neil understood the significance of today. It was a subtle gesture, a trial, perhaps even the initial move towards something grander than he ever imagined. He departed at dawn, steering his vehicle northward to the suburban fringes of Chicago, where the campgrounds met a swath of preserved woodland adjacent to Lake County. As he arrived at the unassuming townhouse where Rachel lived, he noticed the boys' tent bags and coolers piled beside the garage. A minivan sat idle in the driveway, its rear door ajar and belongings scattered inside, waiting to be sorted. The screen door let out a familiar creak as he drew near, and just as he was about to knock, Levi erupted from within, clutching a crumpled paper bag and pulling a sleeping bag that flowed behind him like a cape. "Mom, I discovered the trail mix," he shouted, oblivious to Neil's presence until he almost bumped into his leg. Levi raised his gaze, his eyes fluttering open. "Hello there." With a grin, Neil took a step back. "Hello. It seems you are Levi." Levi cast a questioning glance. "Are we acquainted?" "Not just yet," Neil replied softly. "Yet I hold on to that hope." Before further words could escape, Rachel emerged onto the porch, drying her hands with a dish towel. Her gaze locked with Neil's, weary yet serene. "They are all situated in the rear. Feel free to join me on the porch. I will present them individually." Neil nodded and trailed behind her to the quaint wooden deck at the rear of the house. A couple of eclectic patio chairs were arranged, and a partially filled jug of lemonade rested on a table next to a pile of comic books. The yard, though modest in size, exuded a warm charm, bordered by a chain-link fence and adorned with wild, flourishing hedges. It had a sense of warmth and affection, despite the slight disorder. Rachel stepped inside and emerged a minute later with Bryce, who appeared somewhat more solemn than the rest. He regarded Neil with a serene, contemplative demeanor that gave Neil the impression he was under the scrutiny of an astute young investigator. "So, are you familiar with our mother?" Bryce inquired, easing into the chair opposite him. Neil nodded, selecting his words with precision. "I certainly do. We once shared a deep bond. I wasn't present at your birth, and there's so much I've missed out on. I would love the opportunity to learn more about you, if that's all right." Bryce inclined his head thoughtfully. "You're the person from the soccer match and the science exhibition." With a grin, Neil admitted his guilt. "Stealth is not my strong suit." Bryce offered a subtle smile. "I have no objections. You resemble us a bit." Mason suggests that it holds significance. Neil let out a gentle laugh, feeling a comforting tightness in his chest from that recognition. It seems that Mason could be onto an intriguing idea. One after another, the boys emerged. Mason, ever inquisitive yet careful, probed into Neil's profession and inquired about his preferred snacks. Ethan felt a sense of ease wash over him, his pride swelling as he admired his science fair ribbon. He was excited to share with Neil the fossil he had discovered at the campground. Levi was a whirlwind of energy and humor, always in motion, always pushing boundaries. As all four boys gathered around him, Neil experienced a sensation he hadn't encountered in years, a profound sense of belonging that resonated deep within his very essence. They conversed for almost an hour, with Rachel occasionally interjecting but primarily remaining in the background. Neil shared tales with them, polished and cheerful, reflecting on his youth, the blunders he encountered during his college days, and the memorable occasion when he unintentionally charred lasagna, triggering the fire alarm. The boys chuckled and inquired, and for a fleeting moment, everything felt effortless, authentic. At a certain moment, Mason leaned in, narrowing his eyes at him. "Will you be returning again? Is this only for today?" The inquiry lingered in the atmosphere, ethereal and elusive. Neil took a deep breath and surveyed the group, allowing the silence to linger just enough to create tension. "Only if that's what you desire." I would be pleased to. I would love to be included in your lives, provided your mom is on board with it. And if you find yourself in the same situation. The boys exchanged glances, their unspoken understanding conveying so much more than words ever could. Then Ethan, always the one to speak up, offered a brief nod. You're welcome to return, but you'll need to master the art of Mario Kart first. Levi's harshness is striking. Neil chuckled, the sound surprisingly resonant in his own ears. Agreed. However, it will only happen if one of you is willing to guide me. As the sun sank behind the trees and the chill crept into the yard, Rachel emerged at last, arms crossed, her expression a mystery. All right, everyone, let's get to work on unpacking. Please assist in the kitchen. They hurried away, offering little resistance, while Neil rose to his feet, massaging the nape of his neck. Thank you, he murmured gently. Rachel gazed at him intently, her eyes lingering on his face. They have a fondness for you. That is significant. However, this does not imply that we are all set in stone. Indeed, Neil responded. Yet, it marks the beginning, and I will seize every moment available to me. She paused briefly before giving a nod. On Wednesday nights, they attend swim practice. Feel free to join and observe. Remain at the rear once more. He wore a smile. I would appreciate that. Rachel pivoted and stepped inside, leaving the door ajar behind her. Neil lingered on the porch, the cool evening breeze sweeping by him. It was neither a miracle nor a fairy tale conclusion, yet it was genuine. For the first time in 9 years, it seemed as though the narrative of his existence was finally unfolding anew. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. Wednesday evening arrived with a gentle chill that suggested autumn was approaching more swiftly than the calendar indicated. Neil navigated the road leading to the Public Aquatic Center in Evanston, his window partially lowered, allowing the scent of wet leaves and the onset of twilight to fill the car. He continually practiced his words, his demeanor, the distance he should maintain with the boys, and how to avoid crossing any boundaries. He remained uncertain about Rachel's true expectations, yet she clearly instructed him on the time and place to be. For the time being, that sufficed. He chose a spot distant from the main entrance, lingering in his car for a few moments before making his way inside. The atmosphere thrummed with the chatter of parents and children, the piercing calls of coaches' whistles, and the splashes reverberating against the tiled surfaces. Neil surveyed the pool area, his gaze landing on Rachel, who sat solitary on the topmost bench of the bleachers, her legs elegantly crossed. Her eyes were fixed on the water. The 4 boys had already plunged into the pool, goggles securely in place, as they absorbed their instructors' shouted directives. He ascended the steps with caution and settled a short distance from her, remaining silent. For a brief moment, they simply observed side by side, the quietness known yet not unwelcoming. Levi was focused on outpacing the others, seemingly disregarding the coach's guidance, while Mason approached the task with utmost seriousness, refining each stroke with precision. Ethan effortlessly balanced concentration and enjoyment, while Bryce appeared to be strategizing a way to succeed with minimal effort. Neil was astonished by how uniquely each one stood out, even though they looked the same. Observing them at this moment, he could foresee who would rise to the challenge, who would take their time to find their rhythm, and who might eventually refer to him as Dad, without a second thought or perhaps never choose to do so. Rachel finally uttered her words without shifting her gaze. They were thrilled at the thought of your arrival. Mason even spread his towel out for you. He often finds himself forgetting his own name on days dedicated to swimming. Neil let out a gentle laugh. I feel truly privileged. She cast a fleeting look in his direction then. I'm still in the process of understanding my emotions regarding all of this. Allowing you in after all this time. It's not about imposing consequences on you, Neil. It was never the case. It was merely a matter of enduring. He nodded with a deliberate slowness. I understand. I find myself contemplating it constantly. What I longed for. Reasons for my surrender. What I desire at this moment is something I can't quite articulate yet. I simply can't afford to let any more slip by. She appeared to embrace that notion, The act of forgiveness was not particularly dramatic. No emotional scene. A simple harmony, yet in their situation it seemed profoundly significant. The practice session unfolded with a series of drills, interspersed with a few light-hearted splash wars that the coach attempted to manage, albeit with limited success. Neil couldn't help but smile at their antics, sensing a change within him. Ethan waved from the pool, calling out, "Hi, Neil!" audible to all within a 10-foot circle. Neil felt a sudden jolt in his chest. Rachel chuckled softly, shaking her head in amusement. "That one is quite understated." "Indeed," Neil remarked. "I observed." As practice concluded and the boys approached with damp hair and triumphant smiles, Neil stood firm, ready to face the onslaught. Mason offered him a towel, his own, and declared, "I saved this just for you. Mom thinks you might have overlooked one." Neil accepted it with appreciation, noting the subtle scent of chlorine and laundry detergent. Above all, it seemed like a beckoning call. "Thank you," he remarked. "You all performed wonderfully out there." Quickly concentrated. "Levi, you could very well be part dolphin." Levi swelled with pride. "I mentioned it to you. Swimming is my destiny. And sprint. And ascend." Bryce let out an exasperated sigh. Last weekend, he found himself ensnared in a tree. For approximately 20 minutes. "I was experimenting with the force of gravity," Levi retorted. They collected their equipment, and Rachel distributed a snack bar and a juice box from a canvas bag to each person. Neil lingered next to her, caught in a moment of uncertainty about whether to depart or remain. She cast a quick look at him before shifting her gaze to the boys. "We typically enjoy our evening meal at the burger joint on Main. Nothing extravagant. They devour their meals with the ferocity of wolves after practice. If you wish to join us." He acted without a moment's pause. "I would be delighted to." The burger joint exuded a cozy ambience, featuring dim lighting, inviting booths, and an abundance of ketchup bottles ready for use. Neil settled into a booth opposite the boys, while Rachel claimed the edge seat, allowing the boys to engage in their playful debate over who would place the orders. Felt like a dream. The clamor, the vibrancy. The moment Levi sent his fries cascading across the table, while Bryce meticulously arranged the ketchup packets into a spectrum of colors. It seemed like a life he had observed from a distance for far too long. And now, in an inexplicable twist of fate, he found himself within it. At one moment, Mason inquired, "What made you cease communication with Mom?" Neil paused for a moment, glancing at Rachel, who remained still, allowing him to continue. He gazed at his hands, then shifted his attention to the boys. At times, individuals err. Large ones. I believed I had to decide between pursuing achievement and being a devoted partner. I believed that if I simply earned enough money, it would solve all my problems. However, by the moment I came to understand my mistake, an excessive amount of time had already elapsed. I believed Rachel and the boys would fare better in my absence. Ethan's voice was a gentle whisper. "Your existence was unknown to us." Neil gave a slight nod. "The most challenging aspect is that." A silence hung in the air, unbroken for a moment. Then Bryce shared a subtle, hushed revelation. "Indeed, we certainly do." Rachel remained quiet for the remainder of the meal. Yet, there was a depth in her gaze that suggested more. Something careful yet open. As Neil made his way home that evening, his mind was filled with the echoes of the boys' laughter, particularly the moment when Levi had insisted on taking a ride in Neil's car, only to spill half a milkshake on the seat. He was completely unfazed by the task of tidying it up. He maintained a constant smile throughout the entire duration. After almost 10 years, he found himself actively engaging with his life rather than merely observing it pass by. He found himself reliving it once more. Disordered, boisterous, tumultuous. He was reluctant to release his grip. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. On Saturday morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen, illuminating the floor of Rachel's cozy little home in Evanston. The kettle emitted a gentle whistle, while the warm aroma of cinnamon toast wafted through the room. Neil positioned himself at the counter, attempting to apply peanut butter onto the toast with care, mindful not to rip the delicate bread. A strangely challenging endeavor with 4 eager 9-year-olds lingering close by. Bryce assumed the role of the critic, analyzing every movement, while Levi cleverly pilfered apple slices from the cutting board. Mason meticulously sorted their Lego pieces by color and shape on the dining table, while Ethan sat cross-legged on the floor, animatedly reading aloud from a joke book and chuckling at his own punchlines. The house hummed with a vibrant energy, the sort that was genuine and unpurchasable. Neil had chosen to spend the night on the couch, a choice that seemed more instinctive than unsettling. Rachel had extended a blanket to him, and he took it, choosing not to overanalyze the kindness behind her action. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it held a gentler essence, a quiet faith in the unfolding journey, perhaps. Rachel strolled in, clad in a hoodie and jeans, her hair still glistening with moisture from a recent shower. She looked at the organized mess and smiled in that weary but satisfied manner that all parents seem to perfect. "Did you make it through the morning?" Neil smiled broadly. "Hardly. I've been reassigned from the esteemed position of toast chief to the humble role of apple slice refiller." She reached for a mug perched on the shelf. "That's a significant accolade in this household." They exchanged a soft chuckle, then settled into a comfortable flow, her pouring the coffee while he distributed the breakfast. The boys gathered around the table, their mouths stuffed and voices raised, passionately arguing over superhero rankings and the existence of ghosts. Neil observed them, absorbed their words, and came to understand the depth of what he had longed for. Beyond mere birthdays and school performances, he had longed for the cadence of mornings, the mundane intricacies, the way Levi casually dipped his toast into his juice as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Following breakfast, Rachel proposed a visit to the farmer's market in the downtown area. It was a charming spot brimming with artisanal soap displays, jars of golden honey, vibrant fresh produce, and dog walkers whose pets resembled stars. The boys were allowed to choose a little something for themselves. Bryce selected a beautifully hand-painted rock that resembled a turtle. Mason selected a delicate bonsai tree. Ethan discovered a captivating mystery novel at a quaint used book stall, and it ignited a spark of love within him. And Levi, true to form, purchased a whistle and promptly began to blow it as if he were preparing for the Olympics. Neil took care of all the expenses and handled the bags, yet it transcended mere financial matters. It revolved around being there, about making an appearance, about getting the small details right this time. Rachel observed but chose not to say anything. Her silence had shifted from a sense of distance to a keen observation. She observed him embracing the role of a father he had never been permitted to fulfill. Perhaps she was beginning to embrace the idea that it wasn't just a fleeting moment. In the afternoon, the family found their spot at the park by Lake Michigan. The boys dashed toward the jungle gym, their laughter ringing out as they raced, occasionally calling to Neil to take notice of their antics. Neil perched on a bench next to Rachel, a bottle of water clutched in his hand, his gaze fixed intently on the children playing nearby. A soft breeze wafted from the lake, stirring the leaves and bringing with it the aroma of damp grass and warm pretzels from a nearby vendor. "You're doing well," Rachel remarked unexpectedly. Neil gazed at her, taken aback. Alongside them, she included, "They have placed their trust in you more quickly than I anticipated." He paused briefly before responding. "I'm often unsure of my path, yet I feel a strong desire to be present in this moment. I aim to reclaim what I have lost." She glanced in his direction. "It's interesting how they inquire about you in your absence, even while putting on a facade of indifference. That holds significance." They remained still, observing their boys as they ascended, stumbled, chuckled, and rose once more. Neil reclined, savoring the moment when, out of nowhere, Levi dashed over, breathless. "Would you be able to take us to the movies this evening, please? There's that mechanical one." Rachel arched an eyebrow at Neil. "Are you ready for this?" Neil beamed with delight. "Are you all conducting yourselves well?" Levi nodded with a dramatic air of gravity. "Consistently, unless we find ourselves in a different situation." "Indeed, primarily yes." The film erupted with sound and relentless action, captivating the boys as they clutched their popcorn, eyes sparkling with thrill. Neil sat beside Rachel at the end of the row, and at a pivotal moment during the climax, Ethan leaned in and whispered, "This is the best day ever." Neil felt a constriction in his throat. Following the film, Neil took them back home. The vehicle buzzed with lively discussions and inquiries regarding sequels and robots, pondering whether Bryce could create a comic book adaptation of the tale. Upon arriving at the house, Rachel instructed each of the boys to prepare for bedtime. With reluctant sighs, they complied, shuffling their way up the stairs. Rachel hesitated at the threshold, watching as Neil made his way out. "You know," she said, arms crossed, her voice gentle, "we have parent-teacher night next Thursday, if you wish to join us." Neil took a moment to stop and reflect. "I would appreciate that, truly." She gave a slight nod. "I will send you the details via text." And just like that, a delicate change had occurred once more. A call to become a lasting presence in their journey. Neil slid into his car, turned the key in the ignition, and paused for a moment in the shadows, sensing the return to a narrative that was distinctly his own. He wasn't aiming to resolve everything in a single moment. Yet, his presence marked the beginning of something new. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The Thursday evening of parent-teacher night arrived sooner than Neil anticipated, bringing with it an unexpected blend of anxiety and anticipation. He had not set foot in the boys' school since prior to the divorce, before their lives had been shattered and gradually, agonizingly restructured. Rachel had fulfilled her promise by sending him the address and time, even adding a cheerful smiley face emoji. A little something, yet undeniably uplifting. Clad in a navy button-up and jeans, Neil arrived at Dewey Elementary in Evanston, just as the sun sank beneath the skyline. He spotted Rachel making her way across the parking lot, a manila folder in her grasp. She offered him a subtle nod, then positioned herself patiently by the front steps, awaiting his arrival. "You arrived," she remarked, her voice airy yet sincere. "Certainly," Neil responded. "I wouldn't dream of missing it." The school exuded the familiar aroma of polished floors and freshly sharpened pencils, a scent that remained constant through the years. Posters adorned the walls, featuring illustrations of planets, a corridor that read "Be Winterboard," and vibrant construction paper turkeys sporting sunglasses. Neil and Rachel received a map and were guided toward the third-grade classrooms, where the 4 boys' teachers awaited them. It soon became clear that the boys had forged their own unique identities. Mrs. Keener, the teacher of Bryce, was the first to address the group. She was small in stature, sporting short silver hair, and radiating the enthusiasm of someone who truly enjoyed her work. Bryce possesses an admirable sense of curiosity. Somewhat headstrong, yet he has an insatiable curiosity about the mechanics of everything. Last week, he inquired about the reason gravity doesn't seem to intensify during rainfall. Rachel beamed, a clear sense of pride radiating from her. Neil let out a soft laugh. That seems to fit his character. Next came Ethan's teacher, Mr. Slade, who exuded a weary yet gentle aura. Ethan devours more books than anyone else in the class. Occasionally, he completes his reading task and subsequently requests an additional one. He has also been crafting small detective tales. One of the stories revolves around a banana thief. Neil burst into hearty laughter. "That's absolutely wonderful." He always had a penchant for unraveling enigmas. Levi's instructor, Ms. Molina, was youthful and communicated with a straightforward demeanor. Levi possesses a keen intellect, exceptionally sharp, yet he often finds himself sidetracked. When he loses focus, the entire class often follows suit. He possesses an irresistible charm. Rachel arched her brows in surprise. "We refer to him as our little tornado." Ms. Molina gave a slight nod. "That makes sense." Mason's teacher, Mrs. Drury, possessed the demeanor of a seasoned veteran, one who had seen it all and was no longer taken aback by anything that unfolded in her classroom. Mason is an artisan, perpetually creating with paper clips, rubber bands, or pipe cleaners. He presents me with small contraptions of his own creation. They may not function, yet they certainly leave a lasting impression. Neil radiated joy. He creates a sanctuary as well. Last week, I found myself stepping on a paperclip catapult. As they transitioned from one classroom to another, Neil observed something that had previously escaped his notice. Each educator referred to both guardians. Mrs. Keener mentioned that Bryce speaks of you. Mr. Slade remarked that Ethan mentioned he watched a movie with you. Rachel was no longer the sole bearer of the burden. His presence was weaving itself into their story. As he listened to the tales of the boys' unique traits, skills, and mischievous antics, a deeper bond formed within him, transcending the role of a father to someone who truly understood them. Following the last meeting, Rachel proposed they take a stroll around the schoolyard before making their way home. The evening air had grown crisp, leaving the playground largely deserted, save for a handful of families still enjoying their time together. They walked by the swings, envisioning Ethan lost in a book, the monkey bars where Levi likely tried a trick beyond his skill, and the art wall where Mason could have displayed one of his blueprints. They're incredible, Neil remarked. Well, I recognize that I have my own perspective, but truly they are remarkable. Rachel regarded him, her arms crossed to ward off the cold. Indeed they are, and at last they're beginning to understand you, the authentic self. He hesitated, contemplating the extent to which he could explore this moment. I want to continue being present, not merely for gatherings and films. I desire to truly engage in this. Rachel paused before responding. She gazed at the encroaching darkness above, then shifted her attention to the rich mulch underfoot. It required a considerable amount of time for me to let go of my anger. It took an even greater stretch of time to entertain the thought that perhaps you had transformed. Yet, witnessing you with them, observing the way they brighten in your presence, is impossible to overlook. They strolled quietly for a brief moment. Then Rachel added, just don't vanish on me again. If you promise to show up, make sure you do. Neil gave a slow, deliberate nod. I promise I won't disappear again. Enough with the justifications. Upon their arrival at the parking lot, Rachel delved into her folder and retrieved a drawing, presenting it to Neil. A sketch crafted by Mason. For boys clasping hands, flanked by two elongated stick figures on each side. One bore the title of Mom, while the other was designated as Dad. In large, bold letters above the image, it proclaimed my entire family. Neil felt a sharp sting in his eyes. He made no effort to conceal it. Rachel offered a soft smile as she swung open her car door. Looking forward to seeing you on Sunday at the Science Museum. Neil gently placed the drawing into his glove compartment, ensuring it was secure. I wouldn't miss it for anything. Before we move on, kindly subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. The days that came after that Thursday night were a flurry of activity for Neil. He had dedicated himself to being more engaged, not only for the boys but also for his own well-being. Initially, it seemed like a test, appearing at the appropriate times, ensuring he participated in the significant aspects of their lives. Yet, as he continued to be with them, it gradually felt more instinctive. Saturdays brimmed with adventures to the Science Museum, leisurely strolls through the park, and occasionally, cozy afternoons lost in video games within the comfort of their living room. He observed how each of the boys had their unique approach to connecting with him, and it filled him with warmth to witness the diverse ways in which each relationship flourished. Bryce, with his insatiable curiosity, would inundate him with intriguing facts about the solar system or inquire about the mechanics of various phenomena. Ethan, who was more reserved, would occasionally hand him a book with a subtle request for his reflections. Levi, brimming with enthusiasm, would drag him into a spirited game of soccer. His eyes glimmered with a playful defiance. And Mason, the craftsman, would unveil his latest innovations with enthusiasm, always keen for Neil to witness his masterpieces. Neil often found himself observing from the sidelines in the lives of his children. At that moment, he was gradually and surely integrating into it. He started to observe details. The manner in which Ethan would rhythmically tap his foot when anxiety took hold of him. Whenever a new project captured Bryce's attention, his eyes would sparkle with excitement. Levi would go out of his way to bring laughter to others, often at his own expense. Mason, ever the architect of dreams, effortlessly drew Neil into his vibrant realm of creativity. Being there and witnessing it firsthand was truly remarkable. He had transcended the role of a mere visitor. He was woven into the fabric of their everyday lives. The transformation in Neil was evident not only to the children but to others as well. Rachel had as well. Their dialogues flowed more freely, devoid of tension and bitterness. A fresh comprehension blossomed between them. A new form of partnership had, in a sense, been discovered by them. A relationship that transcended conventional boundaries, fostering a dynamic where they could co-parent with mutual respect and transparency. One evening, after they had taken the boys to a local basketball game, Rachel turned to him while they stood by the car, patiently waiting for the boys to finish their post-game snacks. "You're doing well, Neil," she said softly, her voice tinged with an unexpected sense of wonder at her own admission. Neil gazed at her, astonished. "Could you clarify what you mean? You've consistently been present, not only for others but also for your own sake. You are truly here." Neil nodded, a comforting warmth enveloping him. "It's astonishing to realize all that I overlooked during my absence. Things have changed. It seems as though, quite frankly, it was meant to unfold this way from the very beginning." Rachel smiled, a fleeting glimpse of warmth breaking through her typically reserved exterior. "Indeed, perhaps that's true, but what matters is that you're present now, and that holds significance." The weeks rolled on, filled with subtle, serene recognitions that they were indeed moving forward. Neil understood that the journey to fully healing everything would require patience, yet for the first time in years, he sensed they were heading toward a positive change. The boys flourished, their characters unfolding beautifully, and Neil was present for every moment. Next, a school play unfolded. The boys had been gearing up for this moment for weeks, and their excitement was palpable, particularly for Levi, who had secured a small speaking role. On the evening of the show, the school gymnasium buzzed with families filling every seat. Neil spotted Rachel in the front row, camera in hand. She offered him a warm smile as he drew near. "You made it," she said, her voice laced with a mix of astonishment and a subtle sense of accomplishment. "I wouldn't miss it," Neil replied, as he comfortably took his place beside her. The lights faded, revealing the stage adorned with the vibrant energy of the second-grade cast from the school. The narrative revolved around a collective of animals discovering the significance of collaboration, with all 4 boys playing a pivotal role. Only when Levi stepped into the spotlight did Neil feel his heart swell with emotion. His son, brimming with vitality and enthusiasm, spoke his lines with a level of assurance that Neil had never witnessed before. As Levi completed his scene, he dashed off stage, his cheeks aglow with exhilaration. He spotted Neil among the throng and waved, a broad smile lighting up his features. Neil returned the wave, his heart swelling with feeling. As the final act concluded and the curtain fell, the boys hurried to greet him. Levi leaped into his embrace, and Bryce promptly began inquiring about the upcoming play. Ethan carried a subtle demeanor, yet there was an unmistakable radiance of quiet pride about him. Mason brought up the rear, his expression contemplative. "Did you catch the moment when I constructed the treehouse on the set?" he inquired, his tone brimming with enthusiasm. "I certainly did, my friend. It was wonderful," Neil responded. The journey back that evening was serene, punctuated only by the boys' chatter about the performance. Rachel and Neil shared a fleeting look. An unspoken connection lingered between them, yet it was clear. It was instances like this, Neil reflected, that rendered everything meaningful. The years filled with errors, the moments of separation. This moment was the culmination of everything that had come before. Upon arriving at their home, the boys leaped from the car, dashing eagerly toward the entrance. Neil paused for a moment, his gaze fixed on them, before shifting his attention to Rachel. "I'm pleased we're embarking on this journey," he remarked, his tone subdued. "Likewise," she responded, her smile gentle. After a lengthy period, Neil experienced a renewed sense of control over his life. It wasn't flawless, nothing ever is, but it was genuine. And that, Neil pondered, W.